Hey Trey, Coach Mike, we're going to look at this analysis that we did tonight, the first time we got a chance to work together. I'm going to let this run through and let you look at in slow motion, and then we're going to go back into this and look at each different angle from the front, the side, and the back, and look on areas that we need to work on or just get better at in reference to body mechanics. And just realize that as we go over each one of these little things that if we were to eat an elephant, how would we eat an elephant, right? We take it just a bite at a time. We can't swallow an elephant all at once, just like you can't do all these things that we're going to talk about in this video analysis at one time. You have to work on one thing, and sometimes when you work on that one thing, that fixes two or three things down further in the mechanics that you don't even have to worry about, because the one initial, let's say the initial movement, getting our body moving toward home plate, can fix stepping outside, opening the body early. Everyone is different, but we just have to see how your body reacts. So let's look at the first analysis, and I like to start out on the front for what an umpire sees or a catcher. And there's two phases to pitching the easiest way. The start of the first phase is the stride, where you pick up the leg and you land on the leg. That's the stride phase. The throwing phase takes place, really the upper body. And that's where the upper body, once the foot lands, it's on a turn and then rotate through. Now what we're going to see in here, as you go to drive your body to the plate, one of the first things you do is watch everything. There's a reason why this line is here, because as a right-handed pitcher, we either want to land on that line or about 6 to 8 inches on this side of the line. But you're going to watch, because we're not really getting much lower half power, then you're going to use your upper body to compensate and see how your foot, instead of landing on that line here, just starts reaching over. So we start going into the throwing phase before our foot lands. So right here is a good position, let's say the front side and the back side, for when your foot lands. But you can see how far off you are before that foot lands, so then we're pulling out. So from this point, this is where we're giving up power. It's like a batter stepping out of the box when they're swinging. All that is giving up power before you land. The other thing that we want to take a look at also is, as you are coming forward, we can see in this back how you load this back leg back here. You're going to see that bend. See how it bends right there? We'll see it better from the side, but I don't think you're really driving off, because when you bend it, I should see it straighten out. But what I see is that knee turning in and just bending over right into here. The other big thing that we kind of mentioned earlier is right here is how you should land. So you just have to time this pulling, but the reason why you're pulling so much with that arm and upper body is because we're not getting any drive with the legs. And remember, we stepped over here, so we're giving up that power. So the only power I have left that I can draw from is up on the upper half, and it needs to be switched. The lower half is where you get the power, and the upper half just reacts to it like a snap or like a whip. So let's go to, let me finish up here. One of the reasons when you get very rotational and you pull out so early, there's a couple things that happen. You're going to see your arm being reached out to the side instead of driving straight forward like this. You're going to see it reach out right in here, because you get really rotational, because this glove is pulling everything this way. When it pulls it this way, it's going to sling that arm out on the outside. And not at your age, but what's going to happen if you were to continue to do that, that would get really sore and that would get really sore. This is called Tommy John, and that's called rotator cuff. So there are two things that we want to stay away from. At your age, I'm not worried about that, because you're not putting the torques in your arm at all. For your body size and your muscle mass, that's not going to happen at your age. But let's go to the next film, and this is from the side. It should be. And let me see if I did two on you. We did one. Yeah, okay, we only did one. So let's go back. One of the first things that I could see from the front is we weren't getting a lot of forward movement. So let's start it here. I'm going to draw the line down here. What studies from the American Sports Medicine Institute talk about is that high velocity pitchers will get their body moving earlier down the mound than low velocity pitchers do. So let's watch how we do. So we actually back away from our target first before we go toward the target. So why that is something we need to work on, because pitchers, when you get to the high school, the college, and the professional level, they have a resume, and on that resume, the scouts and recruiters, they have different things that they check off. Well, one of the things that they check off is the time to the plate, how long it takes you from the point that you first move, right there, to when that ball hits the catcher's mitt. A good A plus on the resume is a 1.3. Now, you're not throwing those velocities now, but in high school, when they're throwing in the 80s, they want to be at about a 1.3 to a 1.4. And then what that means, if a pitcher has that kind of time to the plate and a catcher's pop-up time is 2.0, and a pop-up time is when the catcher catches the ball and then throws it down to second, it hits the catcher and hits the second baseman's mitt. If that's under 2.0, that means a runner has to get from first to second in 3.3 seconds, which there's not many that can do that. So that's why it's important. This wasted movement that you have here, it's an easy fix. What we'll do is just have you kind of start with you up on your toe to get the feel while we're learning it, and then once we get that feel, we can put the foot down. But you're going to be kind of like this. Imagine your foot's on the ground right here. So instead of backing up, the first movement is going to be up, and then we are going to get your hips moving forward as you bring up that leg. To use what's called, everyone uses it day in and day out, it's called gravity. It's what pushes down on us and keeps us down on this earth. And that's why the hill or the mound is slanted, so we can use gravity as part of the power of the muscles that we use in our back leg when we drive into the front foot. So that's why we get our body moving, and that's why studies show that high velocity pitchers will get their body moving earlier than low velocity pitchers. So here we came up, we came down, went up, down, and now I got to come out, right? So if I don't have any power moving this way, the only way I can kind of throw that ball is we're going to fly out over here, which is what we saw on the front. So there's the fly out of the front, the hips open up early, way too early, so then the only thing left, since we can't get any power out of this, is then I have to be totally rotational up here, and that's where the glove pulls early. So you see before the land, the glove is pulling right there before we land. That doesn't happen until we land, but you have to throw the ball, so the only way you're doing it is with the upper body. And then what you're going to see is that elbow never gets above the shoulder. And then the other thing is when it lays completely back like that, that's called external rotation. That elbow is in front of the ear. And so once we start using gravity and using the power that's around us and our back leg, all this on the upper body will change. I'm not worried about that at all, because it happens all the time once we start using the things that are around us to pitch. So that's what you're doing on the front side. Of course, we'll compare this video maybe 3 or 4 lessons down the road and see how we're doing. I think you'll see some dramatic differences. The next thing we look at is on the back, and on the back side, what I look at is I see how you load this back leg. So you actually, what you do is you start bending it real early, even before you come out, it's still bent. And then as we move forward, because our foot slings out, what's going to happen is this knee turns in like that. As soon as that knee turns in, it's hard to drive. So you can see as that hip's opening up, that knee starts turning in right there, and this is when you want to drive. So before that happens, we should be seeing that back leg straighten out to open up the front foot. But because we open up so much over here, then what happens as the front foot moves out that way, for every action there's an equal reaction, and the back leg's going to move that way, and so you really can't drive because your body's not letting you drive at this point. But that drive will really help you out in power, because if you can imagine when you're right here and your shoulder's on the target, if I drive, I'm going to push my hip around this way as I go into cocking the ball. So as you see, as you cock the ball, your arm goes this way. Well, if that's going this way and this is going this way, this creates what Tom House calls hip to shoulder separation. That's the biggest rubber band in your body, and that's what you get to start stretching and help you throw with momentum, higher velocities with safer mechanics. So I enjoyed working with you. Look forward to our next lesson. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to give me a call.